A simple woman stood quietly in line at her own grill, invisible in a faded hoodie and torn jeans, the bill of her old baseball cap pulled low over her brow. It was 12:47 p.m., the lunch rush in full swing, the air thick with the smell of barbecue sauce and fryer oil. Behind the counter, Josh thumbed through his phone while Lexi snapped her gum and rolled her eyes at the woman waiting silently. Another walk-in from the shelter program. Probably, Lexi muttered, not even bothering to lower her voice. Josh smirked. They never tip. Owner's fault for hiring off the street. Lexi shrugged. He doesn't care anyway. Probably drinking smoothies in Buckhead. When's the last time anyone saw him? The woman said nothing. Her hands were tucked into the front pocket of her hoodie, a crumpled receipt still clutched between two fingers. She had already paid pulled cash from a zippered wallet and asked for cornbread on the side, just like she used to when the place first opened. No one looked twice. No one asked her name. She waited 3 full minutes. Then, without a word, she stepped out of line, pushed the door open, and walked out past the window where her grandmother's name still sat painted in gold leaf, though one of the letters was peeling. Behind her, the staff kept talking, laughing now, careless and comfortable. The bell above the door gave a soft jingle. She didn't look back. She moved slowly across the lot, climbed into a dusty sedan, and sat with both hands on the wheel for a long moment, the receipt still in her palm. By the time the staff figured out who she was, she wouldn't need to raise her voice. She'd only need to show up wearing her name instead of hiding beneath it. The first thing Dana noticed wasn't the smell, though it had changed. There was still brisket in the air, still cornbread and a hint of grease, but it had dulled, somehow gone flat around the edges, like a song slightly out of tune. The parking lot was half full when she pulled in, her sedan quiet among the trucks and delivery vans. She sat for a few moments longer than she needed to, watching a waitress through the window refill someone's water without looking at them. Then she opened the door, zipped her hoodie halfway, and walked inside. Ellis & Co. hadn't changed much on the surface. The walls were still painted soft green, the booths still wrapped in chestnut leather that creaked when you slid in. Her grandmother's photo still hung beside the door, smiling in black and white with a pie in her hands. Flour on her apron. Dana stood in front of that picture for half a second too long, just enough for a customer to glance up and then back down. No one greeted her. No host. No eye contact. No smile. She got in line behind a man in work boots and a teenager in a school polo. 2 servers leaned behind the counter, talking softly. One of them snapped her gum. The other picked at her nails with the corner of a receipt. No one moved faster when more customers walked in. When it was Dana's turn, the cashier didn't look up. "Pulled pork or brisket?" she asked flatly. Dana answered, voice quiet. "Pulled pork, side of beans, and cornbread, please." The register clicked, the receipt printed, and the cashier handed it to her with one hand while tapping her phone with the other. Dana stepped aside. She had stood in that same spot 100 times before, back when they'd first opened. When she wore the apron herself. When she remembered the names of every regular and what they liked to drink. Her grandmother used to say service was just hospitality with memory. "People don't need much," she would say. But they notice everything. Dana noticed the wobbly table in the corner, the dust in the fake plant near the restroom, a tray of silverware still damp from the dishwasher, left sitting at the edge of the kitchen pass. One of the cooks shouted something half a joke, half an insult, and the waitress at the counter barked out a laugh that sounded hollow. A family near the window tried to get someone's attention, but no one saw them. No one looked up. When her food came, the server didn't say a word, just set the plate down on the far end of the counter and turned away. Dana picked it up herself, settled into the booth near the back, and stared at the cornbread. The color was right, but the crust looked thin. She didn't eat it. She just sat, letting the noise wash over her. She remembered the way the place used to hum. Not loud, not fast, but warm, like a Sunday kitchen. People lingered. Staff laughed in real joy. Her grandmother's framed recipe for sweet tea still hung above the prep sink, though now it had a soda dispenser beneath it and no one followed the instructions. The register used to have a small notebook beside it. Dana's idea where customers could leave notes for the kitchen? The notebook was gone. In its place was a stack of plastic straws and a tip jar that hadn't been emptied in days. When she finally left, she walked past the old staff ledger still tucked under the front counter. She'd written the first entries in it by hand, logging everyone's hours before they could afford payroll software. It was mostly ignored now, but she noticed someone had used it as a coaster, a pale coffee ring curved across page 27. That used to be Frank's line. He'd been the first hire. She stepped outside. The afternoon sun was softer now. Her car was still warm when she climbed in. She put the keys in the ignition, but didn't turn them. She looked back at the grill, at the sign that still glowed above the awning. The C in Ellis & Co. flickered slightly, just once every few seconds. She'd meant to fix it last month, or maybe the month before that. The wheel felt cool in her hands. Her food sat untouched in a paper bag beside her. She didn't feel angry, just hollow, like someone had shifted the walls of a house she built. The foundation was the same, but the rooms had gone silent. She thought about her grandmother again, about the apron still hanging in the supply room, about the way the staff didn't look at the customers anymore, the way they didn't look at each other. She didn't start the car. She stayed. The sun slipped a little lower in the sky, and Dana kept her hands on the wheel, watching. She needed to know how far the rot had gone. Dana kept walking long after she stepped out the front door, her takeout bag swinging loosely in one hand, the smell of untouched cornbread trailing behind her like something borrowed and fading. Around the side of the building, the pavement gave way to a gravel alley littered with crushed soda cups and a broken mop handle that had been left behind months ago. The back door was closed, but above it, the narrow kitchen window was cracked open an inch. She heard laughter before she even got close. She didn't mean to stop, but something in the tone lazy, practiced, cruel made her still. Man, did you see her? It was Josh's voice. His slow, nasal drawl always curled slightly at the edges, like he was enjoying the sound of his own disinterest. Came in here with that sad little hoodie and handed me a 10 like it was rent money. I almost told her to check the bus stop menu. Lexi snorted. One of the shelter hires. Bet she came in thinking we were going to feed her twice, or tip her. She drew the word out like it was a joke. They never tip. Not once. Not even $1. Dana stood in the shadow of the building, half behind a dumpster, the wall cool against her shoulder, her fingers wrapped tighter around the waxy bag. The cornbread inside was still warm. Josh again. This place has gone downhill since they started that second chance program. Everyone acting like it's a charity, like we're supposed to be mentors or something. This is a job, not a community center. No kidding, Lexi said. And the owner. What owner you seen him? I haven't. Heard he moved to Atlanta and drinks kale now. Last time I checked, he didn't even know who half of us were. Probably thinks this place runs on magic. Dana let the words settle. They didn't sting in the way she expected. They didn't feel like betrayal. Not exactly. They felt like erosion, like slow water carving away something that used to matter. A chair scraped the floor inside. Another voice joined in. Deeper. Calmer. You two done? It was Frank. Dana knew that voice without needing to see his face. Steady. Deliberate. He'd been there from the start. Helped build the original smoker. Stayed late to write schedules when she was too tired to think. Oh, come on, Reg, Josh said. Don't act like you're not over it too. I'm not over it, Frank said, but I'm not wasting my breath blaming people who aren't here to defend themselves. She's not coming back, Lexi muttered. Whoever she was, ghost boss. Picture on the wall. Nothing else. Dana could hear Frank set something down, maybe a towel, maybe a pan. You all talk like this place is dead. Maybe it is. Or maybe it's just waiting for someone to show up again. Silence followed. Not long. Just a pause. Lexi changed the subject. Anyway, I'm not picking up Tyler's shift. Not doing double for someone who still writes his name on the locker in Sharpie. Dana stepped back slowly, her feet careful on the gravel. She didn't need to hear more. She didn't want to. Her takeout bag was heavier than it had been before. She looked up at the window one last time. Through the crack, she could see a clipboard on the wall, yellowed, edges curled. Her grandmother's old recipe for sweet tea still clipped to the top. No one followed it anymore. She turned and walked the long way back to her car, the bag swinging once again at her side, the heat inside it already gone. When she sat down, she didn't cry. She didn't speak. She simply looked at her hands. One held the receipt. The other rested on the wheel. They weren't just mocking customers. They were mocking the idea of the place, of what it had been built for, and she had let them by being gone too long, by mistaking systems for presence. She'd handed them a shell and hoped the past would fill in the rest. She didn't drive off, not yet, not tonight. Dana arrived just before 9. The front door still locked and the air outside crisp with the kind of stillness that settles in before the breakfast rush. She wore a navy blazer over a soft cotton blouse, her boots clean, her hair tied back with quiet precision. No hoodie, no cap, no camouflage, just herself. She unlocked the door with her own key and stepped inside to a room that still smelled like yesterday coffee grounds, bleach, and something slightly burnt. The lights flickered on with a low hum. The silver bell on the hostess stand didn't ring. It hadn't in weeks. She walked through the grill slowly, checking the corners, straightening a crooked frame near the foyer. Her grandmother's recipe card for buttermilk biscuits still hung behind the counter, yellowed and curling at the edges. Someone had stuck a magnet over the signature. She peeled it off, smoothed the card flat, and let her hand rest against it for a second longer than she meant to. The first staff members trickled in one by one, Frank in his grease-spotted apron, Blake with her hair pulled into a quick bun, Josh still buttoning his sleeves. Lexi arrived late, phone in hand, earbuds tucked under her collar. No one spoke, just glances. A few too long, a few deliberately short. They gathered near the front, behind the counter, leaning on booths and standing awkwardly apart. Dana stepped to the center of the room and placed a folded paper on the counter. It was the old attendance sheet. She didn't need to use it, but it meant something to bring it back. She looked up, her voice low, even. I won't keep you long. The room quieted. This place started with a single smoker in a driveway, she said. My grandmother used to wake up at 4:30 to prep collards in a pot that barely fit on the stove. She didn't have investors, just a picnic table, a white apron, and a belief that people deserved good food and better chances. She paused, her gaze moving slowly from one face to the next. I stepped away last year. I told myself it was to grow the business, legal things, accounting, franchise plans. But really, I stopped showing up. I let go of the room, and I let go of the people inside it. A long silence followed, a cough, a shuffle of feet. Yesterday I came back, not as your boss, not as your owner, just someone standing in line, asking for lunch, and what I saw, what I heard, was not the place we built. She looked down at the counter. Her fingers brushed the surface once, then settled flat. I heard people say the owner doesn't care, that we hire from shelters and expect nothing back, that second chances mean lower standards. I heard jokes about customers, about me, about this place. And the worst part wasn't the words, it was how easy they came. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't name names. She didn't have to. I can't change the past. I own my absence. That's mine. But the disrespect, the carelessness that's not mine to carry, That belongs to the people who created it. Lexi shifted her weight. Josh looked away. Frank stood still, arms folded, eyes steady. So, here's what's happening, Dana said. Starting this week, I'll be on the floor twice a week. Not as a shadow, not in disguise. Just me. We're doing monthly check-ins, real ones, 5 minutes, private, with me. And we're restarting guest reviews. Not online, on paper. From the people sitting in these booths. A breath moved through the room. Not release adjustment. I'm not here to fire anyone today. I'm not here to scare you. But I am here to ask one thing if you don't want to be here, if this is just a paycheck or a pit stop, don't come in tomorrow. No questions. No blame. We'll give you a recommendation. We'll make it clean. She stepped back slightly, folding her hands in front of her. No one's going to make you believe in this place. You choose that part. Another pause. Frank gave a short nod. Blake looked at the floor. Lexi stared straight ahead, unmoving. Dana let the silence stretch. It held everything. She reached for the folded attendance sheet again and set it gently aside. Let's see if Ellis & Co. is still in this room. No one clapped. No one spoke. The sound of the refrigerator in the kitchen kicked on behind them. Dana turned and walked back to the pass-through window, her grandmother's recipe still pinned in the corner. She touched it once more before stepping out of view. Behind her, the staff slowly broke apart, returning to stations, checking prep lists, wiping counters without a word. Not relaxed, not transformed, but listening. For the first time in too long. By 11:55 a.m. The line at Ellis & Co. curved toward the front door. The lunch crowd had come in steady, mostly regulars county workers, a few school staff, an older man who always ordered coffee and grits but never touched the toast. Dana stood near the self-serve coffee station, clipboard in hand, refilling her mug with decaf that tasted slightly off. She didn't drink it, just held it, watched. Everyone on the floor knew she was there. They had known the moment she stepped through the kitchen that morning and said, quietly, "Don't change anything for me." Which, of course, meant most of them would change everything. Lexi had swapped her usual hoodie for a button-up shirt and hair pulled too tight. She greeted customers today, but her smile cracked too quickly, her voice higher than usual. Dana caught her glancing at the wall clock 3 times in 20 minutes. Josh hovered between booths, with a towel in his hand, eyes darting toward the coffee station every time he passed. He hadn't said a word to Dana, hadn't made eye contact either. Frank worked the grill, sleeves rolled, apron tied. He hummed something low and tuneless while flipping patties. Of everyone, he moved the most like himself. Dana didn't hover. She simply stood, coffee in one hand, clipboard in the other. The pen clipped to the top hadn't moved since she arrived. At 12:17, the door opened again. Tyler stepped in. He looked even younger in daylight. 19. Maybe. Tall, but folded in. His shoulders curled slightly inward like he was used to ducking under suspicion. He wore clean jeans, a polo that still showed the faded logo of a shelter on the sleeve, and shoes that had been shined carefully by hand. He held something in both hands, his voucher and a folded note. Dana recognized the paper. She'd signed off on that exact voucher system last fall. Tyler scanned the room quickly. He wasn't looking for a table. He was looking for exits. Lexi caught sight of him and froze for a beat. Then her jaw tightened. Dana saw the shift in her posture, the slight lift of her eyebrows as she turned to Josh and muttered something behind the register. Josh looked up, then away, vanishing through the swinging doors to the kitchen. Tyler approached the counter, unfolded his voucher, and placed it carefully on the metal surface. Lexi tapped the screen. "What do you want?" Catfish combo." His voice was soft. "Is it okay if I swap the fries for greens?" Lexi didn't answer right away. She keyed in the order, glanced at him sideways, and said, "Fine." Tyler nodded, his fingers fidgeting with the edge of the receipt she handed him. "Thanks." Lexi said nothing. He stepped aside, holding the slip like it might tear. From the grill, Frank glanced up and spotted the kid. A grin cut across his face. "Yo," Frank called, loud enough for half the room to hear. "You made it." Tyler blinked, startled. "Yes, sir." Frank wiped his hands and came around the side. "Heard you were starting next week. Glad you stopped in early. Greens instead of fries. Right?" Tyler nodded again. "Yes, sir. If that's okay." "It's better than okay." Frank clapped him on the shoulder. "You're family now. That combo's on me." Tyler looked stunned. "You don't have to." "I know." Frank winked. "But I want to." Dana saw Lexi glance over, jaw tight. She tapped the counter twice with her nail, sharp, impatient. Frank didn't notice. He was already back at the grill. Tyler sat in the corner booth by the window, still holding his receipt like a ticket he hadn't cashed in yet. He looked out toward the parking lot. Dana watched him. He sat straight, eyes scanning the menu above the counter again like he wanted to memorize it. She didn't write anything down. Her pen never touched the page, but she didn't need notes to remember what mattered. At 12:34, Frank walked out from the back carrying a tray. Catfish, still sizzling, greens steaming, a thick square of cornbread on the side. He delivered it himself. "Eat up," Frank said, setting it down. "And next week, don't be late for prep." Tyler smiled small, hesitant, but real. "Yes, sir." "Good man." Frank nodded once and turned back to the kitchen. Dana watched it all. The grill's sound softened for a moment. Not silent, but less jagged, less hurried. Tyler dug into the plate like he hadn't eaten a real meal in days. Maybe he hadn't. Near the register, Josh had returned but stayed back, his eyes flicking between Lexi and Dana. Lexi didn't speak. She rang up the next order with robotic precision, her smile now completely gone. Dana took another sip of her lukewarm coffee and let her gaze sweep the room. It wasn't fixed, not even close. But something true had just happened, and she had seen it. She looked at Tyler one more time. He was eating slowly now, savoring every bite, eyes wide with focus. The clipboard in her hand stayed blank, but in her mind, the list was already forming. She knew now who carried the weight of the place and who only showed up to stand in it. Dana stood behind the counter that morning with both hands resting lightly on the surface, the same spot where she'd once served cornbread out of foil trays during soft openings and slow Sundays. The room filled slowly, one by one. No eye rolls this time. No visible tension, just quiet footsteps, the soft murmur of kitchen prep, and Frank pouring coffee like it was a ritual he never unlearned. No one sat. They stood in a loose semicircle near the pass window, some leaning against booths, others holding mugs or wiping their hands on aprons. The air wasn't tense, but it wasn't casual either. It was a room holding its breath. Dana didn't raise her voice. She didn't clear her throat. She simply started. "Thank you for yesterday," she said. It wasn't perfect, but for the first time in a while, this place felt like it had a pulse again. A few eyes lifted. Frank nodded once. Blake held her clipboard a little closer. But one good day doesn't fix a broken culture. One shift doesn't heal what's been ignored. She reached under the counter and lifted 2 plain paper folders, one in each hand. This one," she said, raising the first, "is for anyone who wants to stay, to build this place right, to do the work, not just clock in and survive, but show up with real presence, real care. It's not about being perfect, but it is about being honest." She set it down gently. This one," she said, holding up the second folder, "is for anyone who's ready to move on. No judgment, no shame. If this isn't your place, take a form, finish today's shift, and you'll get 2 weeks of pay and a letter of recommendation." The folder joined the first. She placed a pen between them. "You don't have to decide right now, but by closing, I'll need your name on one of these." She stepped back. That was all. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the room returned to motion. Not fast, not stiff, but cautious. People turned back to their prep. Dana walked to the back booth and sat quietly, clipboard in hand, the folders visible from where she watched. Frank was the first to approach. It was just after 11. He wiped his hands, signed the stay form, and placed the pen back down. "This place saved me," he said. "Time to give it back." Dana nodded. He walked away without needing anything more. Keller came in next, then Jamal, then Blake. Each one stepped forward, signed, and returned to work. No applause, no speeches, just decisions. Lexi kept her distance. She worked the register like it owed her something. Quiet, but detached. When Dana passed near her to refill a pitcher of water, she didn't flinch, but she didn't speak either. The day moved on. Lunch came, then the lull between shifts. Dishes clattered in the back. A phone rang and went unanswered. At 4:12, Lexi walked to the counter. She didn't reach for the stay folder. She picked up the other. "I don't think I'm built for this," she said, voice low but even. "You need people who actually care." Dana didn't offer comfort. She didn't look surprised. "Thank you for being honest," she said. Lexi folded her apron and left it on the edge of the counter. Then she walked out without looking back. By 5:30, the folder was mostly full. Josh hadn't signed either one. Dana didn't chase him. The sun dipped behind the sign outside. The neon flickered. The smell of evening rolls drifted from the kitchen. The register chimed softly as Blake rang out a customer. At 5:57, Josh stepped forward. He picked up the pen, signed the stay form, set it back down. "I'll earn it," he said. Dana met his eyes. No warmth, no warning. Just a calm, measured look that held the weight of everything she now knew. "Don't make me regret it." He gave a short nod and walked away. She didn't write anything on her clipboard. She didn't move. She stood behind the counter and watched as the shift wound down. The crew wiped tables with care. Voices were quieter, but not hollow. Frank stepped out for a breath but returned without needing to be asked. There was no celebration, no promise that everything would be easy. But the team moved with a new kind of energy, not perfect, but present. And for Dana, that was enough to begin again. The morning light slid through the grill's wide front windows, spilling softly across the booths and glinting off the chrome napkin holders. Dana sat near the back, where she always used to sit when the place first opened, the spot her grandmother once called the quiet seat. Her blazer was draped over the bench beside her, sleeves neatly folded. A pen rested behind her ear, and a fresh cup of coffee sat untouched in front of her, growing cooler by the minute. It had been a week since she set down the folders and asked the team to choose. No one called it a new era, and no one said culture shift out loud. But the shifts happened anyway in small, barely spoken ways. Keller now smiled when she plated food, taking time to wipe each rim before it left the pass. Josh checked on guests without being asked, sometimes pausing just long enough to ask if everything tasted okay. Frank still hummed behind the grill, but now the tune had rhythm. It had purpose. Dana didn't walk the floor. She didn't hover. She sat, watched, made notes if needed, and then tucked the clipboard away. People knew she was there. They moved accordingly, not with fear, but with care. At just after noon, Tyler walked in. This time he held himself differently, shoulders back, shirt tucked in, the same jeans, but cleaner. He stepped behind the counter like someone who belonged, exchanged a grin with Frank, and slipped into the prep area. Dana watched as Frank clapped him on the back with a grin. "You ready?" Frank asked. "Yes, sir," Tyler said. "Thanks for letting me start early." "You earned it," Frank replied. No one clapped. No one announced anything. They just got to work. A little later, during the early lull between lunch and dinner, a man came in alone and took a seat near the window. Older, maybe late 60s, with a folded newspaper under one arm and a pair of wire-framed glasses he only wore to read the menu. Blake approached him without hesitation. No script, no forced smile, just warmth. "First time here?" she asked. "Not exactly," he said with a smile. "It's just been a while." She poured him water without being asked, set a small menu in front of him, and offered a quiet recommendation for the soup. They chatted for a moment longer, and then she moved away to let him read. 10 minutes later, after placing his order, he scribbled something on a small slip of paper, folded it, and passed it to Blake. "Would you mind giving this to the owner?" he asked. Blake took it without reading it and carried it to the back booth. "For you," she said simply, setting it beside Dana's coffee cup. Dana unfolded the paper. The handwriting was small and neat. "Been coming here since your grandmother ran the counter. This week, it felt like her again." Dana read it once, then again. Her hand closed around the note with care, folding it into thirds. She didn't smile, not outwardly, but something softened in her shoulders. She slipped the note into her back pocket, then stood and crossed to the window. Outside, the sun hit the Ellis & Co. sign just right, throwing a crooked glow against the sidewalk. The neon still worked mostly. One corner tube flickered every few seconds, blinking out and returning like it couldn't quite decide to stay lit. She could have fixed it. She had the vendor's number saved. But something about the flicker felt honest, like a scar that didn't need covering, a reminder that even the best foundations needed checking now and then. Her reflection in the window was faint, just the outline of her shape, framed by the soft buzz of the neon curve. Behind her, a table laughed quietly. The coffee machine hissed in the back. The bell at the hostess stand sat still. No one had rung it all day. Dana exhaled slowly and whispered, just loud enough for herself. The light's still flickering, but the place is breathing again. She turned, walked back inside, and let the door ease shut behind her. Sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one who says the least. Dana Ellis never raised her voice, never demanded loyalty, and never needed applause. She returned to a place that had forgotten her not with punishment, but with presence. What she restored wasn't just a grill. It was dignity, trust, and the quiet belief that people can choose to do better when given the chance. This is what leadership looks like when it's rooted in humility. And this is what resilience feels like when it has nothing left to prove. If you've ever felt unseen, undervalued, or quietly erased, let Dana's story remind you you don't need to announce your worth. You just have to show up and live it. Let us know what this story stirred in you. Share your thoughts in the comments, and follow for more quiet, powerful stories like this one.